Hello and welcome to Film Seizure. Today we are talking about 1983's Christine by John Carpenter. This is a continuation of our Stephen King month for October. And this movie answers the question, how do you kill something that can't possibly be alive? With us as always, we have Jason and Jeff. Hey guys.
Hello, and who are you?
I'm Chuck. I didn't feel like introducing myself today.
Chuck needs
who is this person?
Chuck needs no introduction.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone knows my voice from the sexy September opening.
That's true. It's seared into their brains.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, so I hope Christine runs over my ears.
Yes. But yes, this is the third installment of Stephen King month, if I'm not mistaken.
Spooky Stephen King month, yes.
Yeah, spooky Stephen King month. As I mentioned, it's a John Carpenter film, so our third pretty awesome director this month as well.
Yep.
That is a theme also for this month. I'm sure it will continue for next week.
Yes.
It will?
Sure.
I don't really know actually who's directing next week's movie yet, but
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, let's talk about it next week or maybe later today. But yeah, so real quick, I didn't pick this film for any particular reason. I don't have a love or didn't have a love for either the book or the movie going in, but it's one that I've always wanted to revisit, and I figured since, it's a Stephen King month and we're trying to do horror films, I'd pick this one. So do either of you have any recollection or any meaningful connection to Christine?
Not really. It's been a while since I've seen it. I remember liking it, but as far as in the pantheon of John Carpenter movies, it's always kind of ranked pretty low for me. It's not one I've revisited often.
What about the annals of Stephen King movies?
The annals of Stephen King movies? Yeah, I mean it's one that I've always kind of thought, oh yeah, that's a pretty good one, but never really watched very often. So yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people really do like this movie. And honestly, watching it again, it had probably been 15 years maybe since I'd seen it, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's got, a lot of classic sort of Carpenter hallmarks to it. Really great music, really cool cinematography, and I really enjoyed it. I just no, I hadn't really seen it very much.
Growing up, it was always kind of around. This came out Chuck, we were like 6 or whatever. So there were always, it was always on cable. It was always on TV or whatever. I probably hadn't seen this movie in even longer. It's probably been 30 years since I've seen this movie. Most of my recollection of it was that my mom always really disliked Keith Gordon's character. Thought he was a real jerk.
There are lots of real jerks in this movie.
Yeah, there are a lot of real jerks. Now, the funny thing is that, he's probably Arnie's eventual personality was probably the types of people that my mom didn't like in high school anyway. So that's probably why she had such an adverse reaction to the lead character, which that's something I am going to talk about a little bit later. I kind of look at this movie as it was always one of those like, oh yeah, it's the killer car. Yeah, that's kind of cool and spooky or whatever. But then watching it, it's interesting because it is not a super highly scored movie when it comes to like Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic or whatever. And I think I see why. And as I was
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, as I was telling you guys before we started, I did watch a video that was comparing the book to the movie. And the things that was better explained in the book were some of my issues with this movie, particularly in the second half of this movie. But that said, I really liked the first half also.
I think you're not really supposed to like Arnie, so I don't know if that's really a character you're supposed to be rooting for.
Which is funny because generally speaking, so Dennis is his buddy, right?
Yeah, but I think that's where the movie does fall apart. Is, you know, Arnie is kind of this dorky guy, right? Sort of, you know, you kind of feel bad for him. He's got a shitty home life, you know, not that attractive, kind of put upon, you know, beat up at school, bullied. But he does have one really good friend. But yet,
who is the guy you should be not rooting for? The jock.
Well, I don't agree with that, but I will talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. Well,
but you know, he's kind of like the guy who gets possessed by Christy, right?
mm-hmm.
He gets possessed by her power, and then he doesn't really have an arc after that. And I think that's why this movie maybe does fall apart for me a little bit at the end.
Yeah, and what I meant by, you know, Dennis not being really the guy typically when you have a dorky character and the other character is the jock, normally the person who's the heel in the face are swapped. It's usually the jock is usually the guy you're not really wanting to root for.
Yeah, he's the antagonist, and the nerd is the coming of age story.
Well, you see, that's what I find refreshing about Christine is that you have a jock and a nerd who were friends as children and remain friends through high school. It's not the cliche of, oh, I moved on to more popular friends, which is in every fucking movie. It's very few movies that give you this really sweet friendship. Sure. And I think, you know, that first half of the movie where their friendship really comes through, and then some of the scenes with them later where Dennis is really trying to get through to him are really what makes this movie work for me.
And also the power dynamic had switched at that point too.
Yes, correct. You know what their relationship kind of reminds me of? It reminds me of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2.
Yeah,
the two main characters in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. I love their friendship.
The reason why I asked you about, and we're kind of getting a little bit ahead, but the reason why I asked you guys if you'd read this book was I was trying to figure out if there was something more to their relationship in the book. Something between the lines, because I mean, at one point, even Arnie was like talking about how he wasn't really good looking or whatever, and Dennis was like, "Oh no, you're good looking."
Not, he says you're not ugly.
Right,
you might be a queer, I think is what he said. You're not
Arnie called himself queer.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, I'm, you know, not ugly.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Dennis
he did.
Dennis said that. He said you might be queer, but and then Arnie just kind of laughed.
No, Arnie.
I remember it vividly. And,
I just watched. It was just an hour ago for me, dude. It was
the other
way.
Because I turned to Susan and I said, I think these two might be into each other.
No, it was
either way. Let's move on. I don't want to have a 5-minute argument about he said, queer said, or whatever. But yeah, they have a sweet relationship, I think, regardless of whether there are undertones of anything. More than that, and that's a King thing in general. He builds great relationships that often make you feel like people are in love with each other, even when they're just friends, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's why I was asking you guys about that, because like I know that typically speaking, has Stephen King ever had a gay character or anything like that was ever on the wrong side of at least somebody that you would kind of pull for? Like, because wasn't the scene in It Chapter 2 with the gay couple that gets...
It's normally the villain or a villainous person that is persecuting.
Right. So they're not typically the guys who are... They're not usually... There's not a... they're a weirdo because they're gay outside of what the town may speak of. King's voice himself is not the one speaking.
No, absolutely not.
Right.
King is generally what you would say as on the right side of history. if that makes sense.
No, yeah, and I thought, I mean, and I wasn't sure about like some of his early writing because obviously times change and whatever, but I
I
had
mean,
never.
he says some awful words and some awful things about people, but it's normally a bad person
Right,
saying, yeah.
right. Yeah, so I mean, this is yeah, and some of the other differences also, from what I understand, is there's a little bit clearer understanding of, not no. What am I trying to say here? There's like, so with the car, Christine, this movie says right from the beginning it was evil because it's still on the assembly line and it cuts off some guy's fingers or practically cuts off the guy's fingers. Then the then like the one guy with his cigar just decides to sit in the car and die,
Yeah.
which is weird. But in the book, there's a whole subplot with the LeBays and
Yeah, there's a lot more of the LeBays in the book. I do recall that.
and it was actually like the question then in the book is more about whether or not it's Roland LeBay who's possessing the car or if he's possessing Arnie, and the car is just evil.
Yeah, so in my opinion, just in general and specifically this movie, it's the car. 100% the car in this film. Which is one thing I wanted to mention before we got too deep into the movie. While the title sequence was boring to look at, I thought it was really cool that you had the mean rev of the engine, and then the car just idles through the entire title sequence, and then we get Bad to the Bone, which that song, like, if that doesn't elicit King in your head just in general, it should, because it's like the perfect example of something he would quote at the beginning of the book, or a book. I'm actually quite surprised that it wasn't quoted at the beginning of this in the actual text of the novel. But I thought that was interesting. The music choices, Jason, as you had mentioned earlier, are wonderful. And probably my favorite part of this movie is the music.
Yeah. Right. And it also, like, there's kind of a dual layer here, right? Like, you've got the typical John Carpenter sting whenever the lights come on. But then you also
the Carpenter Howarth like pulsing synth, suspense score. But then you've got the interjection of a lot of sort of 50s rock and roll.
Right. So there's like, whenever Christine's about to act upon something, whether it's malice towards somebody else or almost like this codependent love with Arnie, there's always some sort of parallel song that she plays for whatever situation it is.
Yeah, it's kind of like the proto Bumblebee from Transformers.
Yeah. Speaking through the radio. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And this is it's a very John Carpenter movie still, like, much like with, even though this is a Stephen King story, much like with The Shining being a Stanley Kubrick movie, I feel like this is a very John Carpenter movie.
Oh yeah.
I mean, sure. Chuck, you brought up the opening credits. It's like, it's the John Carpenter font.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the
Oh yeah, he doesn't go anywhere without that font.
No.
Yeah, coming off of Dead Space, I was a little, or not Dead Space, Dead Zone, I was a little disappointed with the title sequence. That's honestly. But
I have no problem with that critique.
Yeah, he doesn't get too creative with his title sequences. The one that that comes to mind always when I think of Carpenter kind of playing with his title card, his title sequence is Prince of Darkness, where it actually intercuts in between several scenes. It creates this sort of immediate sense of dread.
Yeah. A little bit with In the Mouth of Madness too, where it's playing that like rock song while the printing presses
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, the most fun that like Escape from New York has is after the credits when you get the history of
Mhm.
Staten Island becoming the prison.
Yeah.
Staten Island, yeah, Staten Island, right?
Um,
Yeah, right.
was it Staten Island or just Manhattan? I think it was Manhattan.
Could be yeah, it's probably Manhattan.
The island of Manhattan.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean
yeah, you're right.
that's kind of just John Carpenter's MO a little bit.
Yeah.
It's his calling card, if you will.
I
He's
mean, shit, it's on the fucking poster too. Like
yeah.
I'm looking at the poster, it's the same font. Yeah, no, I certainly agree that like, I mean, even with Salem's Lot, when we talked about that 2 weeks ago, we didn't even really talk about like how like the title on the credits is like chewed away, like it's being eaten alive, which is kind of representative, I guess, of the of the people in town are being eaten alive.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but that Dead Zone title is that's one for the ages. That one is
yeah,
that is in my title cards, my top list of title cards for
My top title cards list.
I love a good title card, and Dead Zone is up there.
Yeah. So what do we have here? Arnie Cunningham or Cuntingham, as he's
Cuntingham.
called.
Yeah,
As he's called
by
throughout
the
the
bullet.
movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it should be Cuntingham.
He,
It's like, come on, guys, do better than I would. Come on.
I don't know. It was the 80s.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have done very good then, probably.
Well, I'm not doing very well in the 2020s.
Who is that guy? Who is that guy who plays the like greaser?
That's
shop
interesting. So yeah, so
people?
we got a handful of people here to talk about just as
Because
so
he's like 30, pushing 40 in high school shop class.
yeah,
Like
so
he has failed and been held back several times.
so many times.
So many times.
So that is William Ostrander. No. That's
Is this Rich Cheloni, Stephen Tash, or is that a different guy?
hang on
I
a
can't
second.
even
I've got
tell.
the wrong. Hang on a second. I got the wrong thing up here. No, that guy is oh yeah, it is William Ostrander. So yeah, he basically is like John Travolta today,
Yeah.
transported back to 1983 to
Yeah.
show up for Shopcut. Like he's even
And plucked out of Carrie. Yeah.
yeah, because like there's that scene when he steps on Arnie's glasses and he's looking up at him, and you got that shot of like that guy's cock. It's like it's the same pant stuffer that Travolta, well, probably Travolta didn't need, but is like you think is there for like staying alive. Yeah. And if you've ever seen that movie, the Jesus Christ, you can just see it all.
Oh, and speaking of crotch, what is up with his lackey Moochie, like grabbing Dennis's junk? Like, was that an actual legitimate, like fighting technique?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I would think so. It's
Only other time
because
I've seen that in a movie, I think, like in a teen fight might have been Tammy and the T-Rex.
oh yeah, it's a total dick grabbing contest. There. No, so yeah, we're talking. Moochie is evil Jonah Hill, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah. So he's well, it incapacitated Dennis. I mean, you got to
it
go
was
with what
effective.
works when you're a fucking
It
loser.
would be effective. It just
Yeah.
seems a little. It doesn't seem like something that an apparently
These are not good.
macho
Yeah,
punk,
these.
tough would. It's not a move I would expect.
Well, they bring a knife. They bring a knife to a car fight. So I mean, they're not the smartest guys in the world.
Moochie's
Oh,
also.
when he pulls the knife when he's trapped in the alley by Christine, killed me. It's like, what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Stab the car?
Well, no, from his perspective, the car was trapped, and the only thing that could be done is for Arnie to get out. He didn't
I
expect
I don't know, man.
for the car to drive through and smush him.
I think he's seen though that the car is like compacting itself.
It hadn't done that yet. It hadn't started yet.
I don't know. I wouldn't put it past him to be the type of guy who would be like, you know what? I'm going to fight this car with this blade.
But anyway, all of those guys that hang out with him are nobodies. They look to Buddy in all of those situations. And the reason I think that Mooch resorted to a low tactic is because Buddy couldn't protect him anymore because Dennis had already knocked him out.
Oh yeah, Dennis.
So his only
book out of Mooch.
Yeah, so the only thing this guy can do is grab him by the balls. Otherwise, he loses.
Right.
I mean,
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You go ahead.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I was just saying that those people, usually those followers of a bully, are doing it because they're in fear of being bullied themselves. They're not really tough guys or anything like that. At least that's my take on these guys in this movie.
It's just very rare you see a dick grab.
Yeah, there was another dick grab in this movie, but it wasn't a fighting tactic.
Yeah. Do you guys know where the novel took place? Did it take place
Pittsburgh.
It took place in Pittsburgh, so it wasn't a classic.
It was dedicated
setting.
to George Romero.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Libertyville, I think the town was called.
Yeah, I think they even actually call out in the book the Monroeville mall. Yeah.
Yes, they do. Yeah. They do, because there's like a hotel across the street from it. Yeah, I remember that. Anyway.
All right, so Arnie is, he's like a high school dude. And, he's got his best friend who is the star running back or receiver of the...
I think it was a receiver, maybe.
I think, yeah, he was a running back or a receiver or something. But he was, they're buddies, been buddies all their lives. That Arnie's got some shitty parents, man.
Yeah.
Very strict. Very, very strict.
Is just the worst. She doesn't like Dennis playing the music when he comes to pick him up. Dennis does have a pretty sweet Dodge Charger, though.
I love that he always parks the car at the front of the driveway. Like, he never pulls in. Yeah. It's like he's non-committal.
Yeah, it's like, man, you're just going to get the tip.
Yep, just the tip. Dennis does just the tip, whatever his last name is.
Gilder.
Thank you.
So it's senior year, right? Because it's like, hey, we're seniors, so it's time to get you laid, Arnie. And it should be mentioned that this takes place, for some reason, in 1978. I don't know exactly why, because both the book and the movie came out in 1983.
I think it was to make the car 20 years old, or barely 20 years old.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, because Arnie even says it's like it's a antique. It's over 20 years old.
Yeah, it's still weird. That's a weird choice.
Yeah. So then they go to school and Arnie's excited because he signed up for shop class, which pissed off his parents, because I think he wants to just be a normal dude, and they want him to be like, go to a good school, be a scholar, be high class. And I think they think anybody who is into the normal stuff are lower class or something like that. That was my take.
It seems like everything that he gets put down for are the things his parents encourage in him as a personality. And so he's rebelling against that.
Yeah. And so there is a new girl who seems pretty smart, but has the body of a slut.
Yeah. This script is weird, man.
I was going to say that with the John Carpenter movie. Now he did not write it. Yeah, it was Bill Phillips who wrote it. But it's still like John Carpenter has a way of like it seems like these kids are in high school, though, even though some of them look like they're 57 years old.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Robert Prosky has a line later. He says, "If I have to come in and get you, I'm gonna get you." Fucking, that's a
Robert
genius
Prosky is
writing.
the best. Well, at
No,
one point he's
great.
also
He's
like
great. But that line is, I just was like, what the fuck?
he
That's a
also
real thing.
said it's like, I know you don't have a whole lot of money coming out of your asshole.
That cracked me up. Yeah. I know you don't have
Because it
money.
wasn't just his ass, it was his asshole. But anyway, no, so this new girl is the Virgin Connie Swale from Dragnet, the movie.
Mm.
Alexandra Paul, and she is she's kind of the object of Dennis's affection in this movie. It becomes really, really important later how that goes. But so they are, they're kind of going about their school day or whatever. Arnie really, like, he tries to get into other conversations that like Dennis is having with these other guys, and like nobody, like the only person who talks to him is Dennis, really. When a little bit later in the day, he's looking or Dennis is looking for Arnie, and this is when you get Stephen King trope number one, psychotic bullies, and that's where we get. Yeah, and that's where we get Buddy Repperton is trying to basically take his lunch, more or less, and or taking Arnie's lunch, and Dennis sticks up for him. He gets the he gets the shop teacher and all of that, and basically it's a humiliating point for Arnie, but it also, I think, begins his technical arc where he starts to become more, he kind of sticks up for himself a little bit, where he, I was afraid he would tell the shop teacher that no, he didn't have a knife. He wasn't really threatening me like that or anything.
Honestly, I think that is just because Dennis is there. I
Probably.
think it's similar to the other goons with Buddy. Arnie has some more confidence when Dennis is around.
Yeah.
I really think his arc starts until he falls in love with the car, personally. But
yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's fair. So then they're coming home from school that day, and like just out of the corner of his eye, he sees this car that he wants Dennis to go back so they can take a look at. And this car's got like shit growing out of it. It's got like it's not in good shape. It's almost entirely made of rust, and it is I mean, we saw it at the beginning when it was rolling off the assembly line. It's a pretty looking car. Not anymore, though. And there's this kind of weird old dude who's selling it and is like willing to sell it for like $250 or whatever.
Yeah, it's Robert's Blossom. It's Old Man Marley from Home Alone.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So then he's like, yeah, I'll sell it to you. It's my brother's car. And at one point, I think Dennis is like, well, if your brother loved the car so much, why are you selling it? And he's like, oh, he's tits up or whatever he says. Or he's stone cold dead. That's what he says.
Stone cold dead.
Yep. And so Arnie gets the car, drives it home. It's not a good car. It's not a good car. It's on fire. Kind of, literally later on fire, but kind of on fire. It has no exhaust. It's just it would not pass the California emissions standards.
It wouldn't pass the emission standards if it wasn't even on, I don't think. I mean, this thing was oozing badness.
No, it was, yeah, and it was living in, like, fern gully was being like was growing out of it.
Yep.
So he goes and he takes it home. Parents freak out on him, and it's already starting to change him a little bit because he decides, all right, fuck it, I'm going to take the car, and we're going to take it to Darnell's garage where I can keep it.
His junkyard or whatever.
It's basically a junkyard, yeah. So I'm going to keep it there, and then I'm going to, just work on it while it's there. But he stays out like a while, and of course the parents are like, "Oh, where have you been?" And he's like, "Oh, you told me to take the car someplace. I'm taking the car someplace. Damn it." And so Darnell's. This is Robert Prosky, and it's so he brings the car in, and he's like, "Hey, so here's some rules. Next time you bring this car in without an exhaust pipe, you're out of here. There's no smoking here. So if you want to have a butt, you got to go outside." And Dennis looks over at the poker game that's happening in the garage. It's like, "But sir, those gentlemen are smoking." He's like, "What are you, a wise guy or something?"
Yep. Which is like the third time already where Dennis has stepped in for Arnie because Arnie won't say anything.
Right. Because
he did
Arnie,
it with the car owner, he did it with Prosky, and he's done it with Buddy. The only people he didn't really stand up to on his behalf was his parents.
Yeah, he doesn't
Arnie's
really
parents.
He doesn't really fight with them.
He's not really shy about it though. He's just so tunnel visioned, right? Like he's with Darnell, he's just plowing through. He's like, "I'm putting my car here. You got a problem with that? What's your problem? I'm putting my car here. Or I'm buying this car. I want to buy this car. Whatever you're asking is not enough." He's just like totally tunnel visioned. And that's what this car, it's starting to infect his brain.
Yeah.
Right.
This car is bad, and that bad is getting in him. And it's making him do things he wouldn't normally do.
Yeah. And so later, he starts pulling stuff out of the junk pile that Darnell's going to throw away. And he's like, "Hey, kid, it's like you're practically completely rebuilding this car with the stuff in my junk pile." Which, did you guys really think he actually literally rebuilt? Like, do you think Christine was kind of helping him out a little bit?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because by the way, spoiler alert: Christine can fix herself like a fucking Borg cube. That
was some of the coolest shit in this movie was when Christine would fix herself.
Yeah,
I think what that sort of felt like to me was that they're symbiotic with each other. Like she's drawing power from him, and he's drawing power from her. Right. That's why she was so run down. She didn't have anyone to draw life out of. Right.
Yeah, and I think that. I'm sorry, Jason.
They're feeding each other.
Like, yeah, I think the odometer kind of showed the amount of life that Arnie had left for Christine to take.
Yeah.
At least that's the way I look at it, because the odometer is going backwards the whole time, and I think that's really Arnie was at 97% when he met the car, and when he dies, the car is at 0 and has to reset basically.
She's almost like a vampire. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a psychic vampire, like King examines in multiple other works.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so he basically, really just in weeks, just a few weeks, because after Robert Prosky's like, "Hey, you can't, it's like, you can pay me back for all the stuff that you do by sweeping up around the place. Put the toilet paper on the little thing." Like there's any fucking toilet paper in that place. Are you kidding me? You're wiping your ass with like ripped out pages of Adam and Eve.
No, it's totally those brown paper towels.
Yeah.
Oh God,
that,
yeah.
like, fold up. That's what you're wiping yourself with.
You gotta wet them. You gotta wet them to use them.
You gotta wet them.
Yep. And I think that's what Darnell has in his mouth is old used fucking cardboard paper.
Well, yeah, hey, you gotta wet them to use them.
Yep,
So
that's what he's doing. He's chewing it until he has to take a shit.
Yep.
Oh,
He's so great though. Like normally, I think of this man as a jovial. Like I feel like he's jovial a lot of the times that
Well,
I
he
see him
wasn't.
stuff.
He certainly was in Gremlins too.
Yeah.
As grandpa or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, so this was like, wow, this guy has a different element I'm not used to seeing with him, and I love it.
So he's basically able to keep Christine there because he doesn't have money falling out of his asshole. So he's got himself a little bit of a job doing something that he kind of had been wanting to do with the whole shop thing. And he opted to to kind of basically just work for this old dude and keep his car there. He gets to use use the space, get to use whatever parts come along. And meanwhile, it is Dennis decides, hey, I'm gonna go chat up the new girl. And he asks her out. And she's like, well, I've got a date on Saturday or whatever, so I'm not going to go out with you. And we find out later at the football game, who has she been going on a date with?
Mr. Arnie Cunningham.
Mr. Cunningham.
Yeah, and can I just say this scene felt really weird to me in the movie, and I was curious about it in the book because Dennis, when he approaches Lee in the film, looks like he's just taking a shot, right? I'm just going to take my shot here. I'm being goaded into it. It doesn't really feel like he has major feelings for her.
right.
And the way he is sidetracked by Arnie and Lee in the scene kind of felt disingenuous to me. I'm like, why is he reacting like this at this point?
It definitely felt. I agree. Like he overreacted in his distraction.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
he should have been like I would expect Dennis, the way he's been towards Arnie this entire movie, to give like a wry smile or something, and maybe that's what gets him hit and hurt, not the way he reacted to it.
Or if they're going to go that way with it, with sort of the jock who's always sort of been the dominant one in the relationship, I wish that he would have kind of learned something from that, other than obviously, getting a very serious injury and ending his football career, but learning something about himself, right? Where maybe I've taken advantage of Arnie.
Right.
And maybe I've set him up to be in this position that he's in. And I would have also liked to see Kelly Preston's character reinsert herself into the narrative here as well.
Yeah, we'll talk about her here in a second because really, honestly, she's completely, totally inconsequential to this movie.
Yeah, it's a shame because they could have done something really sweet with her.
Yeah, well, I have a feeling it's all in the book because. So yeah, like I said, I watched a little bit of a comparison, right? Most people who've read the book, who had their major issue with the movie is that all of the relationship stuff is non-existent in the movie. People go from point A to point B, and then it's the end of the movie.
Yeah, there's only one relationship they concentrate on in this film.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so basically all of the development to understand why Dennis and Arnie are friends, and then later when Dennis and Lee do connect, that's all left on the cutting room floor. There was about on a Blu-ray release of this movie, there is like about 25 minutes of deleted scenes that reinsert some of that stuff.
And I guess the movie's already pushing almost 2 hours. You definitely got to keep it under 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't have. I mean, to have an hour and 50-minute horror movie that isn't an Exorcist movie is odd.
Yeah.
Back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's why. I mean, like hell, the Dead Zone has a lot more interesting things to go into, and it's what, 15 minutes shorter than this movie or something. So it's it's
kind of weird. I think it's where it goes back to the script. I think the script could have been tighter because Carpenter's a pretty lean shooter. You know, he can get to the heart of a story and give you everything you need and give you everything you want, you know, in 90 minutes. But the script, I felt it needed another pass.
Yeah, it's right. And when we get to like some of the things that we're not that we can critique about this, that's going to come through with some of my critiques as well. But so really, basically at this point, Arnie is big man on campus now. He's got the kick-ass car. He's got the new girl who's got the body of a slut. He takes her to a drive-in when it's pouring down rain and impossible to see anything.
There's only one thing you do at a drive-in when it's pouring down rain.
Well, she doesn't want to do it.
You eat popcorn.
Yeah. Well, that's because. So why doesn't she want to do it? She has developed somewhat of a fear of the car.
Yeah, she's getting the vibes, and she's not absorbing them. She's repelling them. Yeah.
Right. And I think she'd be perfectly fine going to town with Arnie in another circumstance.
Right.
Hey, you get a lot of information here because you also realize, if you hadn't already, that Arnie is not going to be separated from this car. There's not a chance in hell that he is going to pick the girl over the car. And Lee recognizes that as well.
Yeah. But also Arnie does recognize that it's a hell of a lot easier to get it on with Alexandra Paul in the backseat of this car than it would be like a Pontiac T1000. That shit ain't going to happen. I'm going to take this car until I find the right lady who wants to, get in the caboose, if you know what I mean.
But it's interesting in this story. That's a good joke. It's interesting in the story because the car normally does help you get the girl, right? Or it's seen as that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's kind of subverting it a little bit.
In all aspects of his life, because he, being an automotive guy or wanting to be an automotive guy and being kind of a natural with cars, has probably seen his entire life how cars have been held up, right?
Yep.
Everybody is starting to hate him because of the car. His parents are reacting poorly. Lee is reacting poorly.
He even says that at one point. Yeah. It's like, I get the feeling everybody doesn't like my car. Because she's like hitting the car. And he's like, hey, man, stop that. It's like,
she says, don't like me slapping your girl. That's what she says.
It's so funny. It's so good. I mean, you get a lot of information in that one scene.
Right.
So he gets out because there's something wrong with the wiper. I didn't know exactly what it was. And Christine turns on the radio. I forget what song was playing, but it's totally appropriate, whatever it is, and makes her choke on a hamburger. And locks Arnie out of the car like, hey, I'm going to take care of this for you, buddy. Man, we don't need her in our lives.
Man, who hasn't been in that situation where you're choking on a hamburger in a 1957 Plymouth?
I'm not going to ruin that one for you.
Man, this whole drive-in scene, this is where I'm shining here, guys.
Yeah. I mean that was probably a normal Saturday night for John Waters, growing up in Baltimore driving.
Oh, shit, but he wasn't choking on a hamburger.
Choking on a hot dog.
Oh,
shit. There it is.
I wasn't going to fully say it, but thank you, Jeff.
There it is.
So, sucking on chili dogs.
So Lee outside the Tasty Freeze. Lee eventually saves herself to a point. She gets the car unlocked, and nosy neighbor dude, who obviously is at the drive-in in the rain to watch other people make out, gives her the Heimlich maneuver, and Arnie gets pissed. He's like, he doesn't recognize that she is dying.
Yeah.
He has no earthly idea there that she's dying, and this man saves her life. And this is the beginning of the end of their relationship, right? They have some moments.
Well, yeah, because he takes her home, and
they have a fight at home.
They have a fight, and because she's like, "Holy shit, you care about this car more than you care about anything else," and he also kind of he's starting to lose his temper a little bit more, and he's. This is also the night that what's his name?
Well,
I
he
keep wanting to
goes
call him
home.
Goose.
So
Buddy?
so so
Buddy.
yeah, he goes home, or he drops the car off, and the goons sneak into the garage, Darnell's garage, and destroy Christine.
And one of my favorite things that is we later find out
Yes,
is that one of the
Um,
goons takes a fucking upper decker dump on his dashboard. And the number of times that comes up later is hilarious. It's like
Shit wipes off, Jeff. Shit wipes off.
and then to your point about him starting to get, angry and confrontational, he after he has a fight with his girlfriend, he drops his car off, it gets demolished by the gang. He goes home, gets in a fight with his parents, and it's a very confrontational fight. I mean, he grabs his father by the throat.
he throttles him.
Yeah, and he's calling him motherfucker and everything. Like he's unhinged at this point.
Yes.
And he's about to become even more unhinged when he finds out the next day what happened to his dear Christine.
Yeah, so he and Lee go back to pick up the car. She's basically decided to give him another shot, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because he's also like, hey, let's go to the same college, and if we get both accepted, stuff.
Yeah, and he's not even going to pick up his car. He's like, I just need to grab my wallet. And
Yeah,
then we'll
he's
have a
gonna-
nice day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Somebody dropped their wallet in that fucking car.
Yep. I think it was a $2 bill. A deuce. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure do.
But yeah, so he starts squeezing her hand real tightly and hurting her a little
Somebody
bit.
squeezed
Like
real tightly.
I'm trying to think of other analogies I can feed.
Just let them come naturally.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
So
let it pass. Just let it pass.
yeah.
Let the fiber do its work.
Yeah. So he walks up to the car and notices it's been destroyed. And it's actually kind of sweet. Lee, even hating the car, feels for Ernie, right?
Oh, yeah.
She's like she's upset that somebody shit on the dashboard of his car.
Well,
And-
who wouldn't be upset
Right.
about that? I feel bad for the guy, and I don't even like him that much.
Yeah, and I mean, he's getting his just desserts, really, right?
He's
To a point.
That shit is true, man.
Yeah, and he basically lashes out at her like, "This is what you wanted." For a moment, I thought he was going to blame her for it, but instead,
Yeah, it almost feels like he kind of does. It's
he's
but
like,
he
"You got
also
what you
blames,
wanted, you bitch."
he also blames it's that night that he throttles his dad because he's like, "Hey, it was your guys' fault,"
Yeah.
and
That's
then he
right.
calls his dad a motherfucker.
Yeah. Which is
Which is
he is.
totally true.
Exactly what he is.
Yeah,
Well, literally, he has to be. You can't argue
Yes.
with that
Yes.
that logic.
Right. Yeah.
that's our point. Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Hey, when you can't be number one, you take
Yep.
that number two.
Yeah,
Anyway,
we're really flushing this one down the toilet.
oh, we really are. It's all over, guys.
Yeah.
Take the plunge.
Oh boy, oh boy. So at this point, Christine is like utterly just wrecked. I mean, like she is like the amount of damage the guys did is kind of amazing. Like I didn't see them walk in with too much tools, but there's no hood.
Oh, I mean, there's tons of tools in this place, so they could have used any number of tools from.
They sledgehammed the crap out of it.
Yeah.
And they apparently
Cut up the
put all.
upholstery. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they took a shit on the dash.
But this is great because this leads to my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's gone to see Dennis yet or since in the hospital, but when he goes back to his car and he starts to, fix her up a little bit. He
He
notices
keeps
that,
playing with the windshield wipers. It was the first thing he bought for the car, new. It was what he was fixing at the drive-in, and then he's like playing, like they ripped the thing, so it's like he's trying to like rethread.
yeah, re-put the rubber back on the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he like turns away, and she fixes her own engine.
Well, he. Oh, is that what? Yeah, that's right. You're right. Go
He
ahead.
turns away, and she fixes her own engine. And he looks at it, and he walks like 5 feet away into the light, and he says, "Okay, show me."
Mm-hmm.
And then the greatest striptease in the universe happens. It's basically what it is, right? It's the lovers dance. Basically, they have that music going. The car's rebuilding itself. It's like, I don't know. It's so cool.
It's the signature shot of the movie. When the headlights come on, the lens flare goes across the screen. Him in like black silhouette, and the John Carpenter synth sting.
Yeah,
Stinger. Music stinger. It is hands down probably the thing that most people have seen from this movie if they haven't seen this movie.
Right. This would be in like video cuts of great horror film scenes or whatever if you were watching.
Exactly.
And I was
it is the montage shot for sure.
Yeah, and I was floored by that scene. I love the way they approached it. I don't know if you guys got the feeling it was like a strip tease or if you're supposed to, but that's 100% what it felt like to me. And I don't know how the hell they did the graphics for this scene in the 80s. It looked real.
It looks good.
It looks really, really good. There's a couple of things they could have done.
Backwards, I'm guessing. On some.
It could have been something that's plastic that's being melted and being shot backwards.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I was trying to figure it out too, because there were times where I thought it almost looked like animated. So what they may have done is they may have had real pieces of something and then they animated in between the pieces.
Yeah. Don't ruin the movie magic for me, Jeff.
Hey, I'm just going to take a shit on that dashboard.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I have mentioned it as many times as this movie has, so I'm done mentioning the shit on the dashboard.
I'll believe it when I hear it, but I'm starting my counter now.
One thing I was going to say real quick. I wrote this down. When he went and saw Dennis in the hospital, so Dennis got distracted when he saw Lee with Arnie, and he basically almost had a severe spinal injury. And so he's laid up in the hospital. He's got a fucked up leg. He had a neck brace on and everything. Well, later Arnie showed up, and it's like he had a book with him. And do you remember what he said the book was called? And if you don't, I have it written down.
I do not.
5,000 Dirty Limericks.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Did you actually see the cover of the book? It said 10,000 Dirty Limericks.
Oh, nice.
I love little things like that.
Maybe you ripped half the pages out.
Well, I was hoping what I was hoping for was for Dennis to say that says 10,000, and he said, "Well, I read half of them, waiting for you to wake up."
Oh, yeah. See,
one more pass, everybody.
A smarter script, yeah.
So anyway, so at this point, Christine completely and totally fixes herself, and her first target is evil Jonah Hill.
Yeah.
And Moochie. And Moochie is hitching rides with truckers. That seems odd.
Well, he's also the dick grabber, so this doesn't surprise me.
Ooh, maybe he was grabbing some dick.
Good connection.
So anyway, he gets dropped off right around that same spot where the opening and closing of Halloween 3 happens. And Christine's kind of just stalking him, just kind of stalking him. And he eventually runs to this little nook in this alleyway where a car can't fit its way in. And that's when he pulls the knife. He's like, I'll cut you, bitch.
Yep.
And she's like, fuck it. And I love that she just goes for it. Just like, fuck, I can fix myself. And just
And I like that there's some question at this point whether Arnie is actually in the vehicle or not.
Yeah,
Right.
because
weren't sure yet.
when she rebuilt herself, she gave herself black windows. Smart
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
Clever
girl.
girl. Yes. That's
He puts the windows on its tint or else it gets... Never mind. Sorry. Go ahead.
it gets the shit again. So then...
One.
So anyway, so yeah, and that's I think a scene like between like all the times that you see her turning on the lights, her cramming herself into that nook to kill Moochie. Like even I remembered that, and I hadn't seen the movie in decades. And I was like, oh yeah, that's so fucking cool. And then, so now this brings in our detective Rudy Junkins.
Yes, the great Harry Dean Stanton.
Yes.
This is kind of where the movie took off for me, honestly. Like up until that point, I was kind of like, I don't know. But the movie, like right at Mooch's death, and when Harry Dean Stanton showed up, I was like, this movie is getting good now. But it kind of had problems at the end, I guess, too. But,
yeah.
I was kind of like, where the hell's Harry Dean Stanton in this movie, right? And then he finally shows up halfway through. I was like, oh, there's Harry Dean Stanton.
Yep, there he is.
Well, it's almost like, damn, where's Tom Skerritt in the dead zone? Oh, there he is, half an hour in or whatever.
Right.
Stanton is also underused in this.
Yes, because there's something really weird that happens at the end, and we'll get there when we get there. And Jason already knows what I'm talking about.
This feels like there was more of him cut.
Yeah. So yeah,
definitely this movie misses the moment where all the major protagonists come together in the end.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And that's very Stephen King, and it's missing that. It's missing a Harry Dean Stanton. Yeah.
So then, so basically he knows that these guys have constantly picked on Arnie. He has already talked to Lee, and Lee's like, yeah, they fucked up his car. And she cries about, like, obviously that Arnie's not in good shape. And he's kind of alluding to, it's like, hey, I know you're kind of capable of getting back at these guys.
Well, and he also knows the paint from the car is at the scene.
The paint's at the scene.
He doesn't come out and say it, but he's obviously knows it because he's asking her. He got the paint. It's not one you can get anymore.
Paint you can find. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can't get cherry red cars like that anymore.
Yep.
Then he's also like, and he also knows that it's like these kids are monsters, and they picked on the kid that may just snap, which that's going to be another thing I'm going to talk about here in a little bit too, because I kind of feel like this movie is kind of, I'll just talk about it later when I can reorganize those thoughts. But so really Christine is just kind of going after everybody who's ever hurt her or Arnie.
Right.
She next is going to chase down Buddy and the guy who was at the beginning of Ghostbusters, who was one of Bill Murray's students.
Oh yeah.
So they're going after them, or she's going after them. She like plows into guy from Ghostbusters right into the gas station, and that fucking explodes. That gas station was made out of flammable fucking stuff, man. Like, that thing explodes, and then Christine comes out of it on fire, and that is rad.
Yeah, it's super cool.
But you know what's even cooler?
Yes, I do.
She runs over Buddy, runs him down, runs him over, and then just leaves him as a fiery heap in the middle of the road.
And runs him over and lights him on fire. So great.
It's
He's
almost
malicious.
it's almost like she just like run him over and then kind of backed up and then like farted fire out of her exhaust right onto him just to rub it in a little bit and then took off again. That's the movie I would have written. One more pass, guys. We could have had that movie. Right, Christine fart. So now things are really starting to kind of stack up. It's like all these shitters are dead. Death to the shitters of 1979.
Yeah, lots of calling people shitters.
This is where Christine goes back to the garage, and I don't think that Arnie is in the car because
He's not.
He's not.
Yeah, he's not because Darnell. This is when Darnell confronts the car, and he thinks that Arnie is in the car or
somebody
else, because he confirms that.
No, go ahead, Chuck. He confirmed what? That
he confirmed that Arnie had his Rolls or Mercedes or whatever, and was doing a delivery.
Cadillac at home. Yeah,
he couldn't possibly be in the car, basically.
Right. I have to come in and get you. I'm gonna get you.
Terrible. Terrible.
Well, that's why he dies the way he dies. He gets squished against the steering wheel to death.
But I like the use.
I don't know why he died, though. I don't know what Christine had against him.
He was mean to Arnie a lot. He really was.
And he was going to come and get you.
He was going to come and get you.
He was using threatening language.
Fair enough. But he...
Plus, he was a witness to her being on fire.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And she plays, "You keep on knocking, but you can't come in." I think
she
to him and other people, too.
To Dennis. When Dennis was trying to investigate what was up with the car, it wouldn't let him in and played that so he'd run off scared.
Yep. She played it a couple times in a few different scenes. But, yeah, so Prosky gets in, or Will Darnell, excuse me, gets in and inexplicably gets in. I guess he's lulled or captivated by the car. The way he gets in and smiles at it when it's totally charred and burned up.
Yeah, maybe he was cold and he thought, "Ooh, this is warm.
Ooh, this will warm me up."
Yeah. And then it squished him. It gave him a big old bear hug.
Yep. And somewhere around this point, Dennis had gone back to see the guy who had sold him the car.
Right, and that's when we find out that his brother, his sister-in-law, and his niece all had died with something to do with the car.
Right.
And that's odd.
Yep.
But at this point, he also is starting to become friends with Lee.
Well, yeah, she calls him at home. He's playing a game with his sister. It's funny.
Risk. He's playing Risk.
Yeah. And his sister says, "It's a girl."
Yeah.
And he picks up the phone, and it's Lee. Yeah. And she tells him that she's concerned about Arnie, and they decide they need to meet and talk about it some more. And she needs to hang on him a lot and put his head on his shoulder and all of that, which she gets really touchy with him and her grief, I guess, or concern for her boyfriend. But they before they meet, though, Dennis tells her, "Well, it's New Year's Eve, and I always go to Arnie's for New Year's Eve. It's a tradition. He's picking me up. I really just want some time to talk to him alone and get an understanding of kind of where his head's at, right? And I'll let you know how it goes." And that leads to one of my favorite scenes in the movie, is that conversation between them in the car. And Dennis really starts to understand how far gone Arnie is, and really truly believes at this point that Christine is the influence, which is what Lee has warned him about. And there's a line that Arnie says that is really, I think it's one of the really great lines in this script. He says, "Love kills me how much it eats."
Yep.
And I think that had to come straight out of the novel because that sounds so Stephen King to me.
Well,
Love
also
kills me how much it eats, and that's literally and metaphorically at play here.
yeah.
Right.
I also like the line he had earlier about, hey, have you ever wondered if part of being a parent is trying to kill your kids?
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
seems very Stephen King also.
That was an offline for me at first, but yeah, I've kind of come around on that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because of what the car is doing to him, it's making any one of his naturally good thoughts reverse itself. Like, he would never believe that parents try to kill them kid, like whatever.
Yeah, he may not like what they're doing.
Right.
But yeah.
But he understands that it's out of love
Well,
until he doesn't anymore.
The car's turning him against everyone.
Yes.
Well, at this point, it's mad love.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. It's that teenage, it's the hormone-filled teenage ideology of love that, makes you a little nutty. But yeah, so, he's, so at this point he's like, yeah, okay, we got to do something about Christine. Preferably also maybe that will fix, Arnie as well. So here's what, he goes over to Christine at school and like knifes into it. Like, hey, go to
Darnell's tonight.
Darnell's tonight, exactly.
And so he's gonna hotwire a bulldozer, and he and Lee are basically going to save Arnie and destroy Christine.
Another thing.
Duel. Yep.
Another thing that struck me weird here, speaking of the touchy-feely Lee and Dennis, is that she had her arm around him while he's driving the cat. And I was like, this doesn't make sense to me. No. But I know that's cutting room floor or story shit that's missing.
Yeah.
Totally. Yep.
So she, so basically Christine really mostly focuses on Lee because Dennis is smart and is in the fucking bulldozer. I would be too. I'm not going to lie. It's like, I'm going to take my chances with Killdozer over here.
Well, they get the trap that they want to spring gets sprung on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's already there.
He's already there.
Yeah. And so, long story short, Dennis gets, or Arnie gets killed by being.
You really did make that long story short.
Well, because all I would say is like,
Mike could really take some pointers from you.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, it's like, what am I going to say? It's like Christine chases her over here, and then she runs over here, and Christine chases her over here.
I think the part where Dennis is protecting her with the cat is kind of cool, actually. And Christine is or Arnie, whoever's in control at this point, I'm guessing Christine, is trying to take hits at her from either side.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cool.
It's a little cat and mouse. It's actiony.
It's a little actiony.
I mean, it's about the most you could do in the 80s with this particular setup.
Yeah, sure. Well, and but anyway, she eventually gets into like the office where she was supposed to go anyway, and Christine goes flying through that, and then Arnie goes flying through the windshield and is impaled on a piece of glass. And he dies not apologizing for anything.
Yeah.
He just
it's kind of sad, really.
It just kind of caresses Christine, and Christine gets mad.
He's a tragic victim, but who doesn't even get one moment of clarity, which is really, it sucks. It's depressing.
It's interesting too when we talk about movies these days. I don't think we'd be given that final moment of Arnie caressing the car, so we have like the finality, the understanding of what was happening with him at the time. We'd be left to guess. So I kind of like that they give you that closure with Arnie.
Well, I mean,
as tragic as it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's she takes everything from him. She doesn't leave any.
And he doesn't realize it in the end.
No. So I mean, she is truly the villain. obviously she's been the villain the whole time, but I mean that doesn't leave anything to doubt. Like
I thought,
she has completely sucked him dry of every ounce of good.
yeah, here I was thinking Lee was the villain the whole time. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, there you go. The car is the bad guy. Everyone.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. The spooky, scary, possessed car. No. No. So and so now Christine is like, all right, fuck you guys. I just lost my life supply. And so Dennis basically crushes Christine monster truck style, and that was kind of awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And then
and she did have some final fight in her to try to rebuild herself.
And he's like, "Oh fuck that!" And is like just rolls over a little bit more. And then smash cut to Christine in a cube, and Harry Dean Stanton standing there is like, "You guys did good on that. It's a good thing you did that because Coast car and shit." And they're like, "Well, we didn't save Arnie." He's like, "Well, you know what? You killed the car, though.
You killed the car." Yeah.
Ba-doop-ba-doop-boop. And that's the end of the movie. And it's like, what the fuck? How did he?
Yeah.
If he's a good cop, he either A, knows it's a ghost car, or B, when they tell him the story, he's like, "Kids, you're coming with me."
Yeah.
Well, again,
you killed your friend Arnie.
Again, I think that he probably was doing a whole side plot investigation where he uncovered all the history of this car, and then went to meet up with them at the Darnells at the end. Maybe he showed up late or something, right? But it's
early, and Arnie knocks him out or something.
Right? Yeah. And then, he's still alive. Then my least favorite line of the movie, which I think is just fucking horrendously stupid, is you hear a radio come on and some music start to play, and
it's some old 50s music.
Yeah, some old 50s music, and it's coming from one of the guys working at the jukebox or at the junkyard with a boombox, right?
Yeah.
And Lee says, God, I hate rock and roll. It's like, what? Fuck you. This stupid line. That's a stupid line.
Yeah, the ending of this movie sucks.
Yeah. It's not good.
It's not good. It felt like it's like, oh, damn, we crushed that car, which also meant we spent our last dollar.
Yeah.
We got to figure out how to fix this.
Cue Bad to the Bone, which is awesome. It's hard to go wrong ending a movie with that song, but fuck. That last scene is garbage, literally.
Yeah, and you get the little villain wiggle from the car, and it's like, I could have done without that part of it.
There's a like, you know what the Harry Dean Stanton, right? Harry Dean Stanton.
Yeah.
You know what was needed from him? There needed to be an entire subplot like Tom Atkins has in Night of the Creeps. And what I mean by that is he fucking knows that there's aliens. He knows that there is goofball shit happening, and you don't have to convince him. He's just going to show up and know what to do. So you needed either a backstory like that where Harry Dean Stanton knew already that the car was fucked because, by the way, the guy who owned the car before lived in between the high school and where these kids live. That means this car's been around.
Mm-hmm.
This car has done some fucked up shit to people.
Yeah.
Legitimately for decades now. I feel like there needed to be that moment when Junkins says, "Hey, you know what? That guy who owned this car, that was weird. He was weird."
Mm-hmm.
And then have him do the investigation that Dennis did.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all someplace in the book, or maybe that's all someplace else. It certainly would be in our second or third draft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you didn't need him in this movie necessarily. However much I liked him in the scene he was in at first, he was made unnecessary, much like Kelly Preston.
Yeah, so let's talk about Kelly Preston.
I mean, Harry Dean Stanton is always welcome. Always.
Yes. Well, he had a single line in Avengers, and it was welcome. Yeah, he's just not. Yeah, there's nothing for him to do there now. So yeah, we've alluded to Kelly Preston. First and foremost, sadly, she passed away this year
Yeah.
from
Breast cancer.
breast cancer. Yeah,
57 years old. Super, super tragic.
yeah,
Yeah, that's terrible.
and she is this character who is named Roseanne, and Roseanne is really, really, really into Dennis. Like, like the first day back at school, like she's looking at Dennis. She's like, wanting to go up and talk to Dennis. More than happy to go up to talk to Dennis, but something always happens and he walks away, or something happens and she can't talk to him.
And she doesn't seem like the vapid cheerleader either. She seems
She
like
is
a really
the cheerleader.
girl. She is a cheerleader, but not the vapid cheerleader.
Right.
Yeah.
And she just seems a little shy, or at least a little with a little bit of bad luck, maybe.
She's super smitten by Dennis for sure.
Exactly. And you would think that everything in your every bone in your body says in every movie made in the 1980s they were already a couple, or they would be the couple. It wouldn't be the new girl and the high school football star. It would be the high school football star and the cheerleader that gets her own shot of her being a cheerleader, which makes you assume that she's the lead cheerleader or the head cheerleader, and yet she is completely played against type. And as is Dennis. And one thing I will say is I like that, because it does give this, it almost has more of a almost like a small town feel, more so than anything else, because it's like, oh, these are just normal kids who are just they're not.
I like it too. There's just not enough of it.
Exactly. So the last time we see her,
It's in the library, right?
well, technically we see her as the cheerleader right after that, because that's when he gets injured.
At the game, yeah.
But she thinks that he is looking at her at the library. He gets up and is walking down the way, but he's really going to talk to Lee. And Kelly Preston gives this so hopeful look that, oh my God, he's coming up to talk to me, and then he just walks by her.
Yeah, that camera shot is pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean,
her look as she's leaving the frame of disappointment is pretty neat.
Yeah. And it's like, all of that is great. And yet it goes nowhere. Nowhere. And it's like, it's almost like this movie had too much stuff to do. And then
I mean, it's a 600-page book.
Yeah. And it's got,
they instead of cutting characters like they should have, they cut some characters' dialogue. Right?
Exactly.
Like they could have done without, as good as they were as actors, etc. Could have done without some of the what became extraneous characters.
Yeah. If you want to know what is a good sign of an extraneous character, go to the Wikipedia page and read the plot. If the plot is as long as this is, which is 7 paragraphs, there's not one mention of Roseanne.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And she is a featured character in the first act of this movie. Just disappears and just disappears. Crazy. And it's a character that should be able to show character growth for many people, right? Because like, I almost expected her to be somebody who ultimately gets hurt by Arnie, not Lee, who just kind of is there and then all of a sudden is a main character after getting no time practically in the first act.
I talk about this movie a lot, and it's a movie that does this really well. A movie that shows you these teenage relationships and how fleeting they are, while also giving everyone a micro story that feels fully realized.
Is it Stand By Me or Goonies? I'm sorry, Dead Kids. Yeah,
Dead Kids.
Sorry.
We're gonna do that movie one of these days. Strange Behavior, aka Dead Kids. It does that love triangle really, really well, and it doesn't take up a lot of time.
Well, I also have an example of how you take a large cast with a lot of stuff to do in a movie that's shorter than Christine and handles it all better. Also in high school, Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah.
Every character gets the exact amount of time and purpose, and they all get arcs.
Fast Time is a different animal, though. It's
sure.
It's an ensemble high school comedy. I mean,
but it juggles all of that, and they all have something to do. Every single character has something to do. This is a movie that has almost as many characters, and almost all the characters except for 3 have something to do.
Well, it's because it's so Arnie centric.
Sure,
that it falters.
Yeah. Much like Arnie, he's got tunnel. This movie's got tunnel vision.
Yeah, which is why I used the Dead Kids example, because that is very centric on Ram from Tron, but there's all these other things happening around him that feels like they all exist correctly and are able to breathe. Whereas this movie, Arnie and Christine suck up all the oxygen.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like there are parts in this movie where it's like there are a lot of good things in it. Like the first half of this movie, I really, really, really like. Because there is a certain swagger to this movie, right? It's neat seeing a character. You know what Arnie kind of reminds me of in this? He turns into Peter Parker from Spider-Man 3.
He does. Yeah.
He does, right? Because he even gets a little rough with his girlfriend too. Mm-hmm. The only thing that's missing is him singing a jazz song and dancing down the street.
Yep, strutting.
But you see there's an interesting character study in there. And there's interesting things to say about love and how it can twist certain things, and how it can affect people in different ways, and how you have your there could even be something to be said there about like the homosocial relationship between Arnie and Dennis, mixed in with heterosexual relationships that Arnie has with Lee, that Dennis wants to have with Lee, mm-hmm. and that Roseanne wants to have with Dennis. And then it's just, then listen to me, I'm starting to sound like Jason.
It's good.
Fart, shitting on the fucking fart. Farting flames out the exhaust pipe.
You said homosocial. It's like, what? Jeff is using these words?
You act like I've never used those words before in my life. Anyway, so no, but there's a lot there that could be interesting. And I was thinking about this at the beginning, because this was in the first act of the movie. And since we started talking about it, I had kind of a different feeling, and I was going to see what you guys thought about this too. I can understand why The Shining was remade, right? Because what the movie was wildly different than what the book was. So they tried to remake something that was more like the book. I understand why it was remade. I understand why The Dead Zone could become an interesting, multiple season TV show and stuff like that, right?
That's just like born to be a serial, type television show. Yep.
Right. And I can even understand why
Murder of the Week or whatever.
Yeah, and I can also understand why Carrie would be remade, because you have different times, mm-hmm. and so on. Why isn't Firestarter like an Incredible Hulk like TV show where you have like the little girl on the run? Because why have they made that?
Because I don't think people really liked it.
But they could make it something that could be liked.
Maybe. I don't think that it was a very popular book nor show or movie. I mean,
but in the first half of this movie, I was thinking it's like,
plus it's sort of like Carrie anyway, right? It's just kind of like a rehash of Carrie.
Well, it get every couple of books. I mean, it seems like it's like Stephen King's like, oh, I'm going to do a second draft on this idea.
And
Uh,
really, I think the fully realized version of Firestarter is his one of his newer books, The Institute.
See, there you go. If you give him enough time, he comes back around to ideas and try to make them better. But anyway, no, and I was sitting there thinking, it's like, could they ever really remake Christine? Is there anything? Is there enough there to say we're gonna have a character fall in love with a car and have that change the way that they are seen and how they act? In
Yes.
I think
I
so
think
too.
you could redo it, but you would do it the way the book did, from Dennis's perspective the whole time. And Arnie and Christine show up in, like, when someone's storytelling, or in scenes that Dennis is there.
I think I'd also prefer it as a miniseries.
I could see that too.
yeah, and I mean when the more
it won't look nearly as good as this movie did.
No.
Though. This movie looks gorgeous.
the reason why I've started to kind of change my opinion myself on this was while we were talking about it. This is, it's like this could be made from the perspective of an incel.
Huh. Yeah.
Because like what's really holding Arnie down from having a normal social life? Well, he's kind of down on himself. So he doesn't really, and why is he down on himself? Well, you could play that up into either particular people or some sort of misguided, reasoning behind why he wouldn't be a very good, why he's not really worth anything, or why he's not very popular or whatever. And then all of a sudden he gets this cool ass thing and he thinks that he's like, fucking badass or something. And it's the same. It's almost, in a way, it's kind of the same story as, in a way, it's kind of the same story as you see with school shootings anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where I figured you were going to go there too. And I think it would just be too depressing for me to watch. One thing I like about this movie is you can read all of those things without seeing all of those things.
Fair enough.
Right? And I don't really want to see school shootings played out anymore on screen. I don't want to see any sort of like, inside the mind of an incel. I just don't,
I can understand, because in a way,
I think that there's some value in humanizing that behavior, but at the same time, it's just so dark.
yeah.
I just don't want it.
Well, it also, in a way, I'm not necessarily against that idea or against what you're saying either, because in a way, it also not humanizes, but legitimizes that these things occur because people feel a way, because then people will say, hey, I feel that way.
There's a movie, you guys probably haven't seen it, but you might have heard of it, My Friend Dahmer.
Yeah. Well, it's based on a comic.
And that movie really towed that line well. It was surprisingly good. I could see, a movie like that inserting Christine into, with the right balance of tone, working. And I think it especially works when you're talking about a person who is a recognized monster, right?
Yeah.
So you find yourself sympathizing with things about him, about his life, but at the same time, it's like, well, still, I mean, this is still Jeffrey Dahmer we're talking about here,
Well, I mean, and also, I mean, the reason why I was kind of thinking about that too is that, quite frankly, it's like Arnie becomes this tragic character that is twisted, right? And you see it like when that last time, or like in that last scene where he's in the car, and it's like you see him inside the car and he already looks dead. Like he's already
totally devoid of his of his humanity. Yeah.
He's got like the rings around it, almost like he's like an old school zombie.
Yep.
He's not there anymore.
Nope.
The odometer's at 0 basically at this point.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, no, I mean, I have a feeling that if we found out tomorrow that this was going to be made and released next year, I guarantee it's going to be an incel movie.
Yeah.
Because it's the allegory now, right? The outsider who becomes the killer. Well, for whatever. But anyway, bad ending, but I mean, it's a fun enough movie. It's it's definitely well worth the way it looks, the way John Carpenter does his thing with music, where sometimes you have to really kind of listen for it to hear it. He doesn't let it.
Aesthetically, this movie has all the goods.
Yeah.
Goods. Yep.
And maybe there is an extended version that someday is out there that
that'd be cool.
That reinserts all of those connective tissues.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So. I could use them, but I don't know if I want to watch a 2.5-hour Christine movie either. But
I think if it works, it works. But maybe it didn't. That's why it's out.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So, Jason, what are we watching next? Are we watching Carrie next week? Is that what we got? We got Carrie next week. Everybody, see you later.
I wish. Especially after watching Christine, I was just feeling the loss of not watching Carrie next week, because I think the beats are so similar in a lot of ways, and we could really have drawn a lot of comparisons.
And Christine is way better than, or Carrie is way better than Carrie.
Oh
Christine.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Carrie's
probably would have been the best movie of this month, honestly.
Yeah,
but it didn't go that way. It didn't.
It came down to
the popular vote. The popular vote won.
But the Electoral College.
The Electoral College got us.
Yeah, sure did. So next week we're bringing
what's the story?
We're bringing back our good friends Blake and Amber. And they when we told them, when we did the Dawn of the Dead episode, we said we're going to do a Stephen King month for October, and you all can pick a Stephen King movie, and come on the show and talk about it.
Could they pick it?
No, it was the only one we told them was off the table.
Well, and non-horror, because I couldn't pick Stand By Me.
And non-horror, correct. We can do like a non-horror King month sometime next year, maybe. That would be fun. But we told them it couldn't be a non-horror, so no Shawshank, no Stand By Me. So they
Misery, yes. Dolores Claiborne, no.
Right. So Dolores Claiborne would almost fit, but
almost.
Not quite. So they had it narrowed down between Carrie, I think through our influence, and 1408. And ultimately they chose 1408.
After watching them both, they chose 1408.
Okay. That's weird. But okay.
What disappointed you the most about that choice, Jason? Like, what can't you talk about now?
I can't talk about Jack Fisk and Sissy Spacek and their connection to David Lynch.
Yes. But you just did, so you're good.
So you got it. There you go. That's all right. We'll come back around to Carrie in a matter of months, I'm sure.
Yes, because I think we will, for sure.
Because I didn't buy that on Amazon Prime for nothing. So we'll watch it. We will watch it.
So yeah, what next week? 1408 with the Browns.
Yeah, 1408 with the Browns.
What else? What do you got on B Movie Enema, Jeff? Is that what you're pulling out over
there? I was pulling up. Taste the Blood of Dracula is the next Monster Mondays.
So that's okay. Sorry, go ahead. On Fridays you have B Movie Enema.
Yeah, so at B Movie Enema, this whole month has been Exorcist ripoffs. for October. So I got Magdalena, Possessed by the Devil, coming out this Friday. Next Friday, I've got Beyond the Door 3. And then I've got, and Beyond the Door 3 also, because I did the movie that was also labeled Beyond the Door 2 at the beginning of October. So anyway, Beyond the Door 2 is way more of an Exorcist ripoff than Beyond the Door 3. I don't pick these movies. They pick themselves. But I also have a special Halloween post that is also wrapping up another thing. We'll talk about that next week. But yeah, so Christopher Lee Dracula Month concludes on Monster Mondays with Taste the Blood of Dracula.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that should be pretty good. Should be pretty good. And of course, all of that stuff is found right here on filmseizure.com. B-Movie Enema stuff is bmovieenema.com. And Facebook, Twitter, find us all of those places. Instagram.
That's good. You did a good job.
Good job, Jeff. Good job.
At least I didn't shit my pants on the dashboard.
Yep.
Shit my dance by the dashboard lights.
3.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So I guess this is the time when we sign off, huh?
I think so. I think
Now's the time on Sprockets when we dance. Dun, dun, dun.
Dude. Yeah. So hey, everybody, I'm Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure.